done for me lately? That's a question that must get asked of many a WWE legend, as the ever-moving machine that is World Wrestling Entertainment rarely has the time to bask in sentimentality or honor those that made an impact in the industry. Yes, certain performers will continue to be put on a pedestal as the greats that they are, and there are specific things like the Hall of Fame that specifically shine a light on the careers of legends. Though WWE can be respectful of legends, they can also quite often be the opposite, and they're not above going out of their way to intentionally disrespect someone if they believe that there's a justifiable business reason behind it, or more often than not, because someone higher up has a vendetta or simply finds it funny. We've seen it play out on our screens time and time again, and as WWE supposedly commits to equality and promotes things like anti-bullying campaigns, these episodes stick out as things the company probably wishes they didn't do. Unless it's to do with Jim Ross, of course, in which case I reckon Vince has another 10 or so hilarious ribs left in him. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 times WWE Disrespected Legends. Join us! Number 10, Randy Orton buries them all. Randy Orton really started to get over in the early 2000s thanks to his legend killer gimmick. Though he had the look and the talent to be a top star, the new persona gave him something to latch onto and took him to the next level as he dropped everyone from Sergeant Slaughter and the Fabulous Moolah to Harley Race and Mick Foley. The gimmick lay dormant for a while, but the Viper revived it in 2020. This led to a situation at the Legends Night Raw in January 2021 where Randy systematically went around dressing down and punking out Mark Henry, Big Show, his old Evolution running buddy Ric Flair, and a host of others. While this was all obviously part of a storyline and designed to get Orton over, it actually proved to be the final straw for Show, who felt genuinely peeved at his on-screen neutering after years of being a good soldier and doing just about everything that had been asked of him. Lest we forget. The world's largest athlete felt as though he deserved better, especially after getting into great shape with the purpose of contributing more to the product. Show, now going by his given name of Paul White, left WWE for AEW and in post-WWE interviews cited the Legends Night incident as one of the factors that led to the jump. Number 9, the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. When WWE have an axe to grind with someone or something, it's not uncommon for them to use their platform to address that grievance, usually in a typically petty or vindictive manner. But you have to have really pissed Vince McMahon and company off to warrant an entire DVD devoted to assassinating your character. The self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior documentary and match collection was released in 2005, after years of Titan Sports and the man formerly known as Jim Hellwig doing battle in the media and inside the courtroom. Warrior's volatile WWE career is well documented, but basically he left, came back, and left again for a number of contentious reasons, usually related to money. The DVD went to great lengths to paint the neon-soaked muscle man as a flash-in-the-pan performer whose promos were rotten, whose matches generally sucked, and who was a major headache to deal with from a business perspective. The hatchet job was striking then, and it's even more so now, since WWE have lionized the character by inducting him into their Hall of Fame in 2014, released other much more glowing documentaries and collections since, and have even named an award after him. Clearly at the time it was felt that the two sides would never work with each other again, but this was pretty damn shocking, even by WWE's standards. Number 8, Kurt Angle's retirement match. Unlike Warrior, it's pretty much universally agreed that Kurt Angle is one of the best ever to lace up a pair of boots, a consummate in-ring performer and a great character too. He's had his ups and downs, no doubt, but the Olympic hero managed to come out of them on the other side, mending fences with WWE in 2017 and being inducted into the Hall of Fame. He then did the general manager thing for a while and inevitably dusted off the singlet and wrestled, putting in great performances in matches like his tag bout with Ronda Rousey, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon at WrestleMania 34. Unfortunately, his time away from the ring had an adverse effect on his health as his body became arthritic and his performance level began to decline. The decision was made for him to retire at WrestleMania 35, and Angle wanted John Cena to be his last opponent. It made total sense, since Cena himself was now a part-time guy and Angle had been Cena's first WWE opponent. Full circle and all that, you know? In the end, Angle ended up working with Baron Corbin at the Showcase of the Immortals, and did the honors to him in a short match that felt suspiciously like filler. Kurt has since expressed some regret over the way his retirement dismemberment match went down, especially since Cena actually appeared on the show in his old Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick in a throwaway segment with Elias. Number 7, the constant humiliation of Jim Ross. Has there ever been a full academic study on the relationship between WWE CEO Vince McMahon and his one-time head of talent relations, Jim Ross? If not, there should be, because it is absolutely fascinating. There is clear respect and reverence there on the part of both, but Vince has often made it his mission to routinely and very publicly humiliate the beloved commentator, frequently doing so in his home state of Oklahoma. I mean, really, where do we even start? The induction into the Vince McMahon Kiss My Ass Club? Being put into a match and getting busted open hard way by Triple H, Linda McMahon booting him in the government mules on Raw, Dr. Heine being traded to SmackDown without prior knowledge so WWE could get his shocked reaction on camera, being shoot-fired by John Laurinaitis in front of his friends and family, having barbecue sauce thrown all over him while he's trying to do his job, the boss himself donning a black cowboy hat and mocking good old JR's Bell's palsy. I'm sure I'm forgetting about 50 other examples, but you get the idea. Despite being well respected by fans and wrestlers alike and doing so much for the business, nobody has been the subject of more cruel on-air abuse than Jim Ross. Be a star, eh? Number 6, Eddie is in hell. The passing of Eddie Guerrero in November 2005 shook WWE and the wider wrestling world to its core. Latino Heat was a beloved performer and a top star, and his death at the age of 38 was one of the industry's great tragedies, especially since he had fought so hard to battle and overcome his demons. The company and its performers outwardly mourned with heartfelt tribute shows, and some people like Rey Mysterio continued to honor their friend in the weeks and months after. Unfortunately, as WWE were gearing up to posthumously induct Eddie into their Hall of Fame, they invoked his name for the sake of storyline and cheap heat. As Randy Orton was verbally sparring with Royal Rumble winner Mysterio, he told the masked man that his former tag partner wasn't in heaven, but that Guerrero was in hell. It was done to elicit a response and create a grudge for an eventual match, yes, but the writers could have written any number of other things for Orton to say without having to be so disrespectful to Eddie and his family. It's made so much worse by the fact that Eddie himself was a devout Christian and had used his faith to help turn his life around after hitting rock bottom. Number 5, the Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart was always professional. Bret Hart always treated the business with respect and dignity. Bret Hart never missed a show. Bret Hart worked when he was hurt. Bret Hart always gave it his all and went above and beyond for WWE and Vince McMahon. Bret Hart was unceremoniously screwed by WWE and Vince McMahon live on pay-per-view and in front of 20,000 of his countrymen. The story of the Montreal Screwjob has been told to death by now, but basically the Hitman refused to drop the WWE title to Shawn Michaels at the 1997 Survivor Series because of past issues between the two, but agreed to drop it to anyone else, anytime, anywhere. Vince agreed that the match would end in disqualification and that Bret could lose the title some other way, only to then double-cross him out of fear that Hart would take the belt to rivals WCW. Which was madness, because Bret would have been legally prohibited from doing such a thing, had reasonable creative control written into his contract, and, oh yeah, had spent over a decade busting his hump and being loyal to the boss. A crying shame, but don't worry, they hashed it out later. Number 4, Jake the Drunk Roberts. Jake Roberts may not be the most savory character the wrestling business has ever seen, but the man is a legend in the industry, and despite his outside-the-ring transgressions, fans will always remember his incredible performances in front of the camera. Well, maybe the 80s stuff, because nobody is going to give a glowing review to his 1996 WWE comeback. Much of that is to do with the Snake being far from his best, but also because the creative wasn't exactly kind to him. The born-again Roberts was presented as a Christian preacher, and him beating his demons, at least temporarily, was something that was shown in a positive light on TV. That was until he began feuding with Jerry Lawler, the wisecracking commentator who used every joke in his book to taunt Jake over his alcoholism. The storyline resulted in a match at SummerSlam. Well, I say match, it was essentially many insufferable minutes of Lawler trying to tempt his opponent with alcohol, like this novelty-sized bottle of wine that looked bigger than El Torito. Jerry won the match and then proceeded to pour Jim Beam down the gullet of Roberts. Roberts, Jim Ross, and others have since come out and said how it was disrespectful and how Jake's very real substance abuse issues shouldn't have been used as scripted fodder. Number 3, Confidential 316. Has any one wrestler made more money for WWE and Vince McMahon than the CEO's on-screen nemesis, Stone Cold Steve Austin? The Texas Rattlesnake was WWE's biggest star during their hottest period, and in fact, much of the Attitude Era's success can be attributed to the popularity of Austin. By mid-2002, however, the bloom was off the rose and Steve was feeling burned out physically and emotionally, as well as being none too happy with the direction of his character or the company in general, as he was taken out of main events and shifted down the card. The tipping point for Austin came when he was asked to do a clean job to Brock Lesnar in a King of the Ring qualifier on a random episode of Raw, with no build-up and seemingly no explanation as to why he was being booked that way. And so the bionic redneck went home and stayed home, refusing to come to work. In response, Vince McMahon not only attacked Austin's character during an in-ring segment on Raw, but he also authorized a piece on the whole situation for New Show Confidential, where the WWE side presented their story while questioning Austin's attitude, state of mind, and respect levels, while also referencing issues in his personal life. Stone Cold returned many months later and has since said that he was in the wrong to walk out in the manner that he did, but that certainly doesn't make WWE's reaction right. Number 2, the Nacho Man and the Huckster. While Austin may have made WWE and Vince McMahon more money than any one single wrestler in history, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage are also rumored to have drawn a couple of quid in their day too. Still, their hard work and contributions didn't spare them any mockery when they went and signed with the competition, as WWE Creative took shots at the Hulkster and the Macho Man in the infamous Billionaire Ted skits, which were ostensibly there to take the piss out of WCW's owner. The Huckster and the Nacho Man were portrayed as two aging, decrepit has-beens that stood no chance of keeping up with the young and spry members of the new generation. Scheme Gene and his hotline were also lampooned, and while the big hits were saved for Mr. CNN, Savage and Hogan were subject to some pretty brutal personal attacks too. After nearly 2 months of this unfunny tripe, the Huckster and Nacho Man met in a match on the WrestleMania 12 free-for-all, where both, along with guest referee Billionaire Ted, died. What a great punchline. This was one of the most egregious examples of Vince McMahon's spite shining through, as he was blatantly feeling the heat of the Monday Night Wars. Randy Savage's brother Lanny Poffo has said that Randy felt very offended by what he saw, especially the jokes about his sensitive bald spot, and that they were one of the many reasons that he never returned to the company. Number 1, Lita's criminal send-off. At Unforgiven in September of 2006, Trish Stratus had her last match as a full-time member of the WWE roster. The perfect swan song, Trish beat her best friend Lita to win the women's title in front of her hometown Toronto crowd. 2 months later, her opponent had her own send-off, though it wasn't quite the Hollywood ending that Stratus received. Lita dropped the women's title to Mickie James at Survivor Series, which is in keeping with the time-honored tradition of the business, but the post-match scene made for uncomfortable viewing. Primetime, who had snuck into the flame-haired diva's locker room earlier in the show, came out to auction off belongings purported to belong to her, such as her underwear, vibrator, and yeast infection cream. Lita decided to leave after finding it difficult to be in the public eye following the love triangle with Matt Hardy and Edge, and WWE rewarded her decision to step away by humiliating her one last time. Certain sycophantic executives have claimed that this was a way to write off her heel character, even though Lita herself was outwardly unhappy about it, trying to get the writers, producers, and eventually Vince McMahon himself to change the script, only to be met with a hard no. Villain or not, Lita had done much for WWE and deserved something more dignified on her last night. Thankfully, her evening didn't end on a downer, as the Rated R superstar organized a lavish post-show going away party for his former squeeze.